My name is Harold James Tate. I am 78 years old. I am lying in a hospice bed in Baltimore, Maryland, and the doctors tell me I have about 2 weeks left. Now I want you to hear me clearly. I did not come here to make you sad. I am not looking for sympathy. I have had 78 years on this earth, and the good Lord has given me more than most people get. I am not angry about dying. I am angry about how I lived, because I spent my entire life, and I mean my entire life, waiting to be happy, waiting to rest, waiting to do the things that mattered, waiting for a day called someday. And now I am here at the end, and I need to tell you something that I wish to God someone had told me when I was your age. Someday is not a day. It is not on any calendar. It is not coming. It is a lie you tell yourself so you don't have to be brave enough to live right now. And I know this because I told myself that lie for 50 years. I believed it all the way to this bed. Let me tell you how I got here. Let me tell you about the lie and what it cost me. I was born in 1947. Grew up in West Baltimore. My father worked the Sparrows Point shipyards, Bethlehem Steel, for 31 years. Came home every night with his hands so stiff he couldn't open a jar. And he never once complained. That was the model. That was what a man did. You worked, you provided. And if God was good to you, maybe one day you'd get to sit down. I carried that into everything. Went to Morgan State, got my engineering degree, got hired by the city. 34 years I gave to the Baltimore Department of Public Works. 34 years of bridges and roads and drainage systems. And every single one of those years I told myself the same thing. This is the investment. The payoff comes later. I met my wife Claudette at a church picnic. Mount Calvary Baptist, summer of 1971. She was wearing a yellow sundress, and she was arguing with the pastor's wife about whether cornbread should have sugar in it. She said no. She was right. And I knew right then I was going to marry that woman. We got married in 1972, and almost immediately Claudette started what she called the Someday book. It was a small leather notebook, brown, about the size of her hand, and she would write down everything we were going to do together. Not a bucket list. She hated that phrase. She called it our real life. The life we'd live when things settled down. Paris was on the first page. She'd wanted to go since she was a girl. Read about it in some magazine at the dentist's office, and never let it go. A road trip along the Gulf Coast was in there. Learn to dance, properly, not the shuffling we did at weddings. Plant a garden that had no purpose except being beautiful. Take a cooking class in New Orleans. Sit on a beach and read a book all the way through without getting up. Simple things, beautiful things, things that cost time, not money. And every time she'd bring one up, I'd say the same thing. Someday, Claudette, someday. After the kids are out of school, after we pay off the house, after I make supervisor, after. My best friend understood. His name was Eugene Redmond. We called him Gene. Known him since Douglas High School. Gene worked the same steel plant my father did, but as a foreman. Smarter than that job deserved. And Gene and I had this running joke. Every Friday we'd sit on his porch with a beer and one of us would say, 5 more years and we're free men. Then we'd laugh. We said that for 20 years. In 1992, Gene was 60 years old. He had put in his retirement paperwork, 3 months out. He had brochures on his kitchen table, fishing cabins up in the Poconos. He'd been talking about those cabins for a decade. Gene grabbed his chest on a Tuesday afternoon, right there on the plant floor, dead before anyone could get to him. I was a pallbearer. I carried my best friend past his wife, past his children, past a church full of steel workers. And when the family let me into his house afterward, I saw it. The kitchen table, the brochures, the retirement folder, still open. A life planned in perfect detail that would never be lived. And you want to know what I did? Nothing. I cried. I mourned. I told myself Gene was unlucky, that it wouldn't happen to me. I looked at the clearest warning God ever gave me, and I treated it like someone else's tragedy. I went right back to waiting, right back to someday, right back to telling Claudette we'd get to the book next year. Now I want to tell you about the price. I retired in 2008. I was 62 years old. I remember the day. I came home with a cardboard box, my desk lamp, a coffee mug, a framed photo of Claudette and the boys, and 34 years of service reduced to a handshake and a sheet cake in the break room. I walked in the front door and I said, Claudette, it's time. Get the book. She smiled. Lord, that smile. Like she'd been holding her breath for 30 years and I'd finally told her she could exhale. But here's what nobody warned you about. Someday is a habit. It doesn't just stop because you decide it should. Even in retirement, I found ways to defer. Let's wait until we fix the bathroom. Let's wait until spring. Nobody goes to Paris in winter. Let's wait until David and the kids don't need us for a few weeks. Claudette went along with it. She always went along with it. Because she trusted me. She trusted that someday was real. That I would keep my word. 4 years after I retired, I went to the hardware store on a Saturday morning. I was buying caulk for the bathroom. I was fixing the bathroom so we could start living. I came home and Claudette was on the kitchen floor. Stroke. Massive. The paramedic said she was gone before she hit the ground. I stood in that kitchen and the world just stopped. My wife of 39 years, my best friend, my Claudette, gone on a Saturday morning while I was buying caulk. That night, after the family left and the house got quiet in that terrible way an empty house gets quiet, I found two things. In the bedside drawer, her passport. I opened it. It had never been stamped. Not once in 39 years of marriage had my wife left this country. I had promised her the world, and I gave her Baltimore. And on the kitchen counter, right where she'd been standing, the Someday book, open. She had been looking at it that morning, and the page it was open to said, in her handwriting, Paris, spring, with a question mark. After 39 years, she was still asking. I held that little book and I wept like a child, not because she was gone, because of what I'd stolen from her. Not with cruelty, not with malice, with someday. Now I am going to tell you something, and I need you to hear it. 3 weeks ago, they moved me to this hospice. Nice people, clean, quiet. The kind of place that is gentle about the fact that you are here to die. There is a nurse here named Priya, young woman, kind eyes. She doesn't talk to me like I'm already gone, which I appreciate. She talks to me like a person who still has something to say. One evening, she was adjusting my IV and she asked me, just making conversation the way you do, Mr. Tate, you lived a long life. What were you waiting for? She didn't mean anything by it. She was just curious. But that question went through me like a bullet. What was I waiting for? And I lay there and I searched. I truly searched for the answer. What was the thing? What was the milestone, the condition, the moment where someday was supposed to finally become today? And there was nothing. There was no gate. There was no finish line. There was no moment where life was supposed to begin. I was just waiting. Not for something, just waiting. Like it was the only way I knew how to live. Work and wait. Provide and wait. Survive and wait. Die and realize you waited through the whole damn thing. And I understood lying in that bed what someday really was. It was not a plan. It was a hiding place. You see, living, truly living, right now, today, that requires something terrifying. It requires you to be vulnerable. It requires you to say yes to joy when joy can be taken from you. It requires you to love without guarantee, to invest in a moment that might not last, to book the trip knowing you might not make it, to say the words knowing they might not be returned. That's frightening. That's uncertain. And my whole life I was trained to avoid uncertainty. You control what you can. You plan. You prepare. You defer the risky stuff, the joy, the adventure, the tenderness, until everything is safe. But everything is never safe. And so someday becomes never, and never becomes a hospice bed and a book full of blank pages. I am not the only one here who learned this. Down the hall, there's a woman named Lorraine Chen, 81 years old, former school teacher, taught 8th grade English for 40 years. And for 40 years, she said she was going to write a novel. She had it all in her head. Characters, plot, the whole thing. She said she'd start when she retired. She retired. Then she said she'd start once she settled in. Then once she finished organizing the house. Then, once the grandchildren were a little older. She told me last week, we talk sometimes in the common room. She said, Harold, I have 40 years of notes. 40 years. And not a single chapter. I had the time. I just never gave myself permission. Permission. That word has been ringing in my head ever since. That is what someday steals from you. Permission. Permission to live before everything is perfect. Permission to be happy before all the conditions are met. Permission to do the thing now, messy and uncertain and imperfect, instead of waiting for a perfect moment that does not exist. I knew this. Lord knows I knew this. I sat in church every Sunday at Mount Calvary for over 50 years, sang the hymns, heard the sermons. This is the day the Lord has made. I knew He gives you today. He doesn't promise tomorrow. I knew it in my bones, and I still lived like I had forever. Gene knew it too. He'd been to enough funerals. He still had brochures on his table when he died. Claudette knew it. She made the book, but she waited for me to say when. And I never said when. We were going to live after we were done working. But we were never done working. There was always one more thing, one more project, one more reason to wait. And the waiting was so comfortable, so familiar, that we mistook it for living. Now, I need to talk to you. My son David is 47, lives in Charlotte, good man, better father than I was, if I am honest. He calls me every day now, sits with me on the weekends, and I love him. I love him so much it makes my chest hurt, in a way that has nothing to do with cancer. But I see it in him. The same lie, the same waiting. Last month he told me, Dad, once this quarter wraps up, I'm going to take the kids camping, really unplug. Once this quarter wraps up, you hear that? That's someday wearing a corporate badge. I tried to tell him, I said, David, don't do what I did, take them now. And he smiled, that patient smile children give their parents, and said, "I'm not like that, Dad. I've got it under control." That is exactly what I said when Jean died. And I think you might be saying it right now. You're listening to a dying man, and somewhere in your head you're thinking, "That's sad. But I'm different. I won't wait that long." But you already are. You are already waiting. You have a trip you haven't taken, a person you haven't called, words you haven't said, a dream you haven't started. And you have a reason, a perfectly logical, perfectly responsible reason for why now isn't the time. And that reason is a lie. It is the same lie I told Claudette. It is the same lie Jean told his wife. It is the same lie Lorraine told herself for 40 years. You are not preparing to live. You are practicing how to die without ever having lived. I am 78 years old. I am lying in a bed I will not leave. And the Someday book is on my nightstand. I look at it every morning. Most of the pages are blank. Claudette's handwriting on the ones that aren't. Paris, the Gulf Coast, dancing, a garden with no purpose except beauty. I tore a page out this morning, a blank one, and I am giving it to you. It's blank. That is the gift. You still get to write something on it. You still get to fill it in with the thing you have been deferring. The trip, the call, the conversation, the risk, the joy. But you have to write it today, not tomorrow, not next quarter, not when things settle down. Today. I'm 78 years old. I've got about 2 weeks. And the only thing I want to do with the time I have left is tell you this. Stop waiting. There is no someday. There is only today, dressed up in whatever it looks like, imperfect, uncertain, and right here. Take it, please. Take it before it becomes a passport with no stamps and a book full of empty pages. If someone you love is living in someday, send this to them. It might be the wake-up call I never got.